Oh, it is Wednesday, the 20th. Spent most of the morning hiring in for a job that's going to be hopefully super awesome. I had mentioned in a video I did yesterday about a little bit of my testimony, and some people had asked about it, and then my wife says I got a confirmation because we went and sat down with Brother Don yesterday when I had a moment, and he asked whatever if I would give it, at a service that was coming up, and a little bit of my testimony. I don't normally talk about it as much as I used to. I did celebrate recovery for about 2 years, and every Saturday, every other Saturday, we did testimony night, and sometimes that I would have to testify, and not to sound like I don't care about my testimony, but it was real weird because saying it over and over again. I guess I lost out on what I thought a testimony really was. When I was 14, roughly around 14 years old, I was at Tioga, Louisiana, at the UPC campgrounds. Now I was praying. If you know anything about that campground, there's this one pole that's kind of in the middle of a seating area, and I remember it very vividly. I was kneeling down next to that pole, and I was praying, and I was asking God what my future was, and where it was that I was going to end up. And I felt a hand actually reach down and touch me on my shoulder, and I felt just this amazing feeling, and you can call it the anointing. I looked up to make sure there was somebody wasn't praying for me, and there was no one there. Put my head back down, and the hand got put back on me. And that's where I felt like my life was going to begin. Little did I know that 4 to 5 years later, I would turn my back, not knowing, not being mature. I would turn my back and leave something over hurt. And looking back on it now, I didn't even realize how much more hurt life was going to bring, and how many other things that I was going to allow myself to be piled upon, and the things that I was going to put on myself, not even other people. I find a lot of times when people give testimony, a lot of times it's not a testimony, it's a big excuse, or who did what to who. So I digress from that part of it. What I would like to say is that years later, I would try again. I would try to get into what I thought church was. And I did. I tried. And then I found myself not being focused and not having my mind trained on what I was supposed to be doing. I was playing a part. And I found myself messing around with drugs. And I went and I told the pastor, I was like, hey, I got this issue. And looking back on it now, I don't know what he thought or what was going on then with him or whatever, but I do know that at the time I felt like he had mishandled it. I felt like my information, my privacy and everything, things that I was trying to work out, I felt like that it was compromised. And once again, I used an excuse to run away and quit. So in my early to mid 20s, I stepped away from God and anything that had to do with it, and I started a long journey of use of methamphetamines, pills. I used everything I could, mostly. Didn't do needles, mostly because my mom and them used to have to hold me down just to get a shot when I was a kid. I just had a fear of being stabbed. But I started a road, and I put on myself a persona and a person who I thought that I was supposed to be for the moment. This is who I was. This is who I've always been. I was just playing a part. And while playing a part, I spent almost the rest of my 20s and my early 30s lost and out there. And I end up going to jail more than once. I ended up being a 2-time felon. I have done things that I do not remember. Some things I do remember that I wish I could forget. The one story that I had to tell when I was in rehab, court ordered, because I probably wouldn't have gone on my own, because I never thought that I had a problem anyway, was when my first time being arrested. If I can tell it, I'll try. But I got arrested, and I was in jail for 3 days, and my son, who had real bad eczema growing up, still has it a little bit. He was in the hospital. He had got staph. And when I got out of jail, the first thing I did when I went home was not go see him, was to get high. And the first night that I went to the hospital, I did drugs in the bathroom of the hospital room. And I had stopped playing the part, and I had become exactly what I thought that I would never be. I had become truly lost in my own mind. I knew that I was lost, but I had truly become really lost. And you would think that that would shake me up, but even after rehab and after the 2 felonies, I still continued to play and be a part of some worldview of what I was supposed to be, I guess. And I still was a good person. That's what they say, you know. Who knows? But 5 years ago, I stepped into a church service, roughly, in Vinton, Louisiana, where I'd spent many a night picking up and doing things that I'm not proud of. And I had a true encounter of deliverance and a true encounter of the presence of God. And in one moment, I had took a lifetime of sin and just pain and loss, and I laid it down. And after laying it down, I realized that there was no other place that I needed to be but in the presence of God. And I knew so much, you know. I had been around church off and on most of my life, and I knew so much, and that was part of my problem, and part of a lot of our problems is we got this idea of what things are, and we're never ever even close half the time to what God has for us. And we just have this idea, if we just pay our tithes and pay our little offerings, if we just show up to the Christmas parade, and we show up to the little programs, and we do all this stuff, and we count ourselves as members, that we're going to be okay. But I had to learn the hard way again. Even after God delivered me, I got back into church, and I slept on Brother Don's couch for 6 months. I had nothing, nowhere to go. I wasn't on good terms with my family at the time, and he helped me, and he helped me put me in. Thank God for men like DeHun Snyder and Clay Fontenot and all these men that are in my life that took a chance on somebody who was broken and who had done so much against, you know, what church people thought we were supposed to be. And my past was so checkered, and it looked like those bathroom floors, you know, those old diners. It was just checkered, and there were so many people that couldn't even. They want to tell you that you're doing great. They want to tell you that you can be whatever it is that God's called you to be. But deep down inside, they're inundated with church culture, which says that if you're not perfect, you can't be used. And I let all that slip back in, and I took my eyes off of being a yes man for God. And I heard a beautiful message by Brother King Gurley about being a yes man. And I based my life around what I was against and what I didn't do anymore, and I based it around drugs, and I didn't do that anymore, and I claimed my deliverance, which had happened, and it happened in one instant, in that one service. I never touched crystal meth or anything ever again. I turned my life truly around, but I forgot to keep telling Jesus yes to everything that he had for me, and just for that one moment I was yes man, and then I yesed and I yesed until finally I let church culture, and when I say that, I'm not trying to be ugly towards churches. What I'm saying is that we have lost an edge. We have stopped being yes to Jesus, and we've been yes to organizations and yes to groups, and we've taken the easy road, and we've taken the road that everyone else deemed okay, but we forgot to ask Jesus and read the Bible and see whether or not that was where we were supposed to be. And I slipped up, and I let some things happen and get back into my life. And you say, like, why, David? You had it made. I got my son back, in that process, and he lives with me, and he was living with me then, and God was blessing me, and I was getting jobs, and I was working, and I allowed myself to focus so much on what I didn't do anymore, and I forgot to pay attention to the things that I was actually doing and the things that God had for me. And I laid down some things, but I picked some other things up. And you're like, well, man, that's crazy. Can you be lost in church? Yes, you can be lost in church. You can do things in church and wear your little suits and ties and your dress clothes, and you can be lost in church playing the drums and doing things that you feel like make you feel better about what you do. But if you're not constantly telling Jesus yes, and you're not constantly focused on making sure that you're living upright and making sure that you're just pleasing to God and not just man. I don't want a little checklist. I'm not talking about checklists, and definitely not talking about standards, the way you live. You ought to have a standard in your life. There ought to be some things, there's some staples in your life that you should never ever go back on. And I look back on it now, and I made mistakes. And then the devil told me that you would never ever, you had your chance. You'd never preach again. You'd never be listened to. All those good words and the way you talk and the fact that you're good with people and all these things I felt like were gifts from God since birth, they were never going to be used. Never. I lost out again. People had turned on me. People that I had respected, they had talked bad about me. And if you're watching this, I forgive you. I understand. I had to go through some things in order for me to even be here right now. In order for me to be able to give my testimony or to be able to tell people about Jesus, I had to be lost, and I had to learn some things the hard way. Man, I wish I was one of those guys that just listened to the pastor, but I haven't always been that guy. So I understand it sometimes when I teach people, hey, don't do this, it's hot. Don't do this, it hurts. And they do it anyway. I understand. I'm still here, though. I'm still here. I was shown once again great mercy. God took my life, gave me a wife. I believe she's given to me by God. People can say what they want. We may not start off on the best of terms, but I love my wife so much. She's definitely a gift of God. Gave me a family. Gave me something to believe in myself. And all of a sudden, God moved me. And I know some of y'all have watched this, and I'm actually sitting in a parking lot of a hospital right now. I just felt that it was appropriate. God moved me and my wife to Freedom Worship Center on 200 South Huntington in Sulphur, Louisiana. And I had no preconceived ideas. I knew I loved the Fontenot's, and they were very kind to me. They had preached me a couple times when I felt like that I was unpreachable. That's even a word. They preached me a couple times, and they just treated me like family. And they were going through their own things. All this was going on. They have their own testimony. They were going through their own issues, and we connected. And when I started going to church over there, the freedom and the testimony that I brought with me, I found a place for it. And every time that we have service, and every time that we do anything in the community, there's a place. I just felt like it's a special place, and I'm not down in either wherever I've ever been, because like I said, I appreciate CLC and Vinton, whatever, Brother Don. He helped make me who I am today. But where I'm at right now at Freedom Worship Center, they call me a pastor. Sometimes I think it's funny, because I was told so many times that I would never be anything, and that I would never ever make it. And then some people, they didn't even have the gall, or the whatever you want to call it, to even say it to my face. They just said it behind my back. And I'm not mad at you, but I found a place in Sulphur that'll take you in. And it doesn't matter how broken you think you are. I can show you to a God. I can show you to a people that He's using on a daily basis to preach and to teach to this world that it doesn't matter how far you go, it doesn't matter if you've turned your back, no matter what, God will forgive you. God will set you back on high. He will open His arms up. He will kill the fatted calf. He will bless you. He will do things above and beyond. And who are we as church people to tell God, or to tell His people what God will or will not do? You know, I asked somebody the other day, you know, Jonah and the whale, people they want to debate about it, you know. They say a whale, whatever, it's a big fish. I heard someone say one time that a whale can't swallow a man. It's not the way it's designed, you know. I try to tell people all the time, though, you don't understand the way God works if you don't understand. If Jonah had not gone to Tarsus, it would be another story where he had fell into a pit for 3 days and 3 nights. No matter what, God's going to use the people that He wants to use in this last days. I want to invite all of y'all. This month is I Love My Church. And it's hard for me to do my testimony a little bit. I'm not going to lie to you. I would rather you look at me as Pastor David over discipleship at Freedom Worship Center. I'd rather you call me Brother David. There are people out there right now that have seen me at my worst. They have seen me as so low. And I can't hold back. And I can't be like, hey, you know what? I'm just Pastor David now. That's just not the truth. The truth is, I wasn't always this way. God took me from a long way off to get me to where I am today. And He can do it for you. He can do it for you. I want to invite you. This is I Love My Church month. And I love my church. They've given me a place to be me and to watch God do things in me, and given me a free place to have God work in my life the way He wants to work. They haven't put anything on me. I didn't have to jump hoops or do cartwheels or recite the whole New Testament backwards or anything crazy like that. I didn't have to do anything like that. I just had to be committed and let God use me and change me and grow me into His will. And I want to invite you to celebrate with us, since we love our church, this Sunday coming up, the 24th, at 2 p.m. at the West Cal Arena in Sulphur, Louisiana, in the event center. We're going to have a I Love My Church blowout. Please come out. It's at 2 o'clock, so if you have church that Sunday morning, you're welcome to come and be with church with us at 2 o'clock at the West Cal Arena. I may try to do a little more of my testimony maybe later. I don't know. There's so much that I've been through, I've gone through. There's so many fires that I've set on my own self. But I just want people to know that if God can use a backslider and a liar, if God can use someone who threw his life away over and over and over again, and if you think that you've somehow gone so far, you have problems that are just so much deeper and bigger, I promise you, God knows every part, intricate detail, even the ones you lie about and the ones that we cover up. He knows every part, and he already has a plan to get you out of it. So, this is the longest probably video that I've ever done. But if you enjoyed it, that's great. I thank y'all. And once again, if anybody's ever talked bad about me and you've watched this, I forgive you. I don't want people to have this misconstrued idea that church people are just these snobby, stuck-up people. We're not. We're broken people. We're people with issues and problems, but we're somebody that knows where to go. We know how to speak the word. We know what it means to have Christ on the inside of you, the hope of glory. We know where we're going. If this thing all comes to a crashing halt today and I'm lifted up off of this ground, or I die 20 years from now, I know exactly where I'm going. I have my hope. My hope is in Jesus. I have the Holy Ghost working on the inside of me, working on the outside of me. It can happen for you. There's nobody too far gone. It doesn't matter your situation or what they say about you, and especially if what they say about you. And if you live in our area and you want to visit our church, that's great. But if you're looking for a church or a place that's going to love you no matter what and help you, we're not going to make excuses for you to keep sitting. But I tell you what we'll do. We'll love you until God gets into every crevice of your heart to where you stop on your own. And you and God work it out. And you get the deliverance that you deserve. I pray right now that anybody watches this, that may God move in your life. May God move in every situation that you make. And I love y'all.